On this episode of Cell TV, I taped this right after a conference here in Nashville, a Live It to Lead It conference, one of my seminars, where we had the top scientists and doctors in cancer, alternative cancer. We learned a ton. But one of the things that really just grabbed me was the increase, almost a 70% increase in childhood cancer since the 1950s. And we learned a lot about the causative factors and why. In this episode, I interviewed Ryan Sternagel, and well, at the seminar, I interviewed him and his wife, and I wanted to bring you this story. And Ryan talks about what they went through, their battle. It's very emotional, but what they learned from it. And right now, it's a pain to purpose story in their life. And they've started a website. They're doing a series, a summit, where they're bringing this information to families where cancer is obviously a part of their story somehow, but also other childhood illnesses. We talk about that all in this episode. You're going to want to stay tuned and hear this story. You're going to want to share this with as many people as you can, because believe me, there's families around you with kids that are sick, have cancer, and it's going to impact them greatly, and they need these resources that we talk about in the show. I'll see you in the episode. Well, I'm here on location with Ryan, and I'm on location again at one of my seminars, actually here in Nashville. And we had you on stage last night, you and Teddy, and talking about your son. And I was heartfelt, so was the audience. We had a lot of tears. The topic in this seminar was cancer. And I really wanted you to tell your story, because what we're seeing is a massive increase in childhood cancers. And you all lived a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I would look at my family. We lived a healthy lifestyle, and my kids received lead inherited from my wife, and it created gut issues. And we had children who were not well, and it became inherited toxins. You ended up with a child that here under a year old, and all of a sudden you're seeing these health things start rising up. Tell the story, but I want you to hear this story, because this is where we are as a nation right now, that we see since 1950s, we've seen a 67% increase in childhood cancers. That's concerning.
Yeah, and you go back, like 100 years, and it was basically non-existent at that point.
Yep.
Doctors had to travel from all around if they wanted to actually study a case of childhood cancer, and now, you go to the mall and you see some kid, with his hair out or whatever.
Yeah.
But so it was, like you said, my wife and I lived a very, obviously we weren't as tuned up with everything we do then, but for the couple of years even before Ryder was born, we were getting rid of using chemical cleaning products and personal care products, and we were even pretty far ahead in realizing that EMFs were a concern and doing everything we could with that. And I was getting into triathlons and marathons and that sort of thing. And Teddy, my wife, was getting into CrossFit, and we were listening to like Ben Greenfield and trying to.
Ben's a good friend of ours.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually I think how I found out about you originally was hearing you on his show. But so we were getting into all of it, and Ryder was born in a birth center with a midwife, and everyone's first question when they talk to us always is was he vaccinated? And
wasn't. Yeah. You were like us. We did a lot of right things. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that said, so we were living kind of the normal. He was our first kid, so living the normal new parent life for about a year. But at like you said, so things started. We didn't really put them all together until eventually, about a month before he turned 1 year old. My wife found a lump in his back when she was nursing him. It wasn't sticking out a huge lump, but if you bent over the right way, like when she was nursing him, you could feel it. And but to back up a little bit, it's we started noticing when we found the lump, we started thinking about all these things. Well, he was born in the 90th percentile. By that time, he pretty much stopped growing at about 6 months. and then just plummeted on the growth chart. He wasn't crawling, and this was at about almost a year old. And it's just all he wasn't handling solid foods, which actually turned out to be an entirely different issue. Once we did get the diagnosis, it turned out that he also had a double aorta in his coming off of his heart that was compressing his trachea and his esophagus. So that was actually a whole nother ordeal. After we got the cancer under control, then we had to fly him out to Pennsylvania to get a heart surgery. But
gosh.
Yeah, and who knows? Probably, somewhere deep down, those two things are related.
So, I mean, obviously, there was a part of the story where, they didn't know what was wrong, and someone said this neuroblastoma, this type of cancer that really, there's no way your child should have this. You brought him for a second opinion. They're thinking there's no way.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Yeah, no, it was interesting because we took Ryder back to our pediatrician, who was a naturopathic doctor, and they basically brushed it off, and which is really strange looking back on it, that he had a lump sticking out of his back and all of these other things that were adding up. But they tried to send us to physical therapy for the crawling thing, and occupational therapy to teach him how to eat. And they even started making Teddy feel bad that she was breastfeeding him, and maybe that was the reason he had fallen off the growth chart. And
that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know. It was really strange. Really strange.
I can't believe in this modern day and age, they actually were thinking breastfeeding was why he wasn't doing well.
Yeah, or maybe just
so they wanted to give him the sugar, corn syrup, soy, GMO product, of course, baby food.
And then Teddy comes home with all the organic baby food or whatever, because they kind of freaked her out. But then, but I don't know. So anyway,
but that was Teddy. If she was going to move to food, she would have done that. But they weren't going to put him on that. They were going to put him on the standard, crap, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but that just, it didn't feel right. We never went to one physical therapy session. It's like
you knew something else. Yeah. And as it turned out, that, the tumor sticking out was just the tip of the iceberg.
That's what they said, yeah. And so Teddy was the one that kind of diagnosed neuroblastoma just from...
they thought she was nuts.
Just from clicking around on the internet. But yeah, so we eventually, and we ended up seeing we got admitted to the hospital, but then it turned out to be an orthopedic physician's assistant that we saw, and he took an x-ray and then sent us back home and said nothing looked wrong. And but we kept pressing after that, and then finally they did an ultrasound just to placate us, more or less, and that's when they did see a mass, and then all of a sudden it became, okay, well now we need to get him back into an MRI to rule out neuroblastoma, is the way they put it. But then the MRI, like Teddy was saying last night, it was it was supposed to be a half hour, then an hour goes by, and an hour and a half, and when the doctor and her nurse did come back in, they both, they had tears in their eyes, and they said that was their words. They said the lump you feel is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
And so it was stage 4 cancer. He had a tumor inside of and growing out of his spine that was larger than his kidneys.
And because it's in the spine, you heard it from stage. We had some of the top cancer experts in the world here speaking, and they said, I mean, sometimes there's a time for radiation or chemo when it's choking something like that, like the spine, right? So you have to decrease the tumor. But the problem is that long term, after that, you better do something else. So let's tell the rest of the story, because, all right, so you get this diagnosis, right? I mean, I can't even imagine how you and Teddy felt. I mean, what was going through your mind at that point?
I look back on it, and it's hard to it's almost kind of like
remembering. You lived through it,
man. It's almost kind of like remembering
through it is what I meant to say.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like remembering a dream.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That's like when I think back about when I was sick. It's almost like a dream looking back.
Yeah, you can't. But I mean, the one thing that I did just have a deep confidence on was that we were going to find a way to get this under control and reverse it. Because along with the just getting healthy stuff, I'd seen a few documentaries on alternative approaches to cancer and that sort of thing. And I did just, your son gets diagnosed with cancer, and especially looking at those scans, I mean, it was spine tumor, and you couldn't even see the spine anymore. There were secondary tumors. They metastasized into the bones.
So did you think for a moment we might lose our son? My brain would go there, and it would. Because I'm one of those things. Okay, the worst case scenario. I almost like want to visualize that. I would. And then I would be, okay, I'm going to fix this. It's not going to happen. Did you go through that?
I mean, of course, that is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But I really just didn't let myself dwell too much in that.
Yeah. I don't know how I would have reacted. I guess that's why I'm asking that question.
And it was, I did a pretty good job of just keeping it together because I knew that's what was needed for the family. For the first few weeks, I put Ryder to bed every night, by myself for whatever reason, and I'd bawl my eyes out, to be honest with you. And but then I'd pull it back together and just.
I'm sure you and your wife were strong at different times, and lift each other up at different times. She'd break down, you'd be strong. You'd break down, she'd be strong.
Yeah. Yeah, but that being said, it was kind of a weird, looking back on it, kind of a weird sense of calm almost in just knowing that we were going to find a way.
Well, look, you and Teddy are action takers, meaning you go through a short period of time like that, but then you take action. And the action is what you need to stay, to stay focused and not get too emotional, right? So you took action. Here you were, right? So, let me back up. They come in now and say, okay, here it is. It's chemo. It's this. It's that. So, finish that part of the story.
Yeah, and so it took weeks and weeks and weeks to get a diagnosis, and then once we finally get the diagnosis, it's okay. You need to get admitted to the hospital immediately and begin chemotherapy. And they didn't even know, they hadn't done a biopsy. They still weren't 100% sure it was neuroblastoma. There's different types of neuroblastoma that do have their own, they're different types of standard of care chemotherapy radiation protocols that they put kids through, but without even wanting to know all of those details, they wanted them to get started immediately, just on their best guess, I guess you could say. And we, like you said, there are times that shrinking a tumor is the right thing to do, and we were certainly open to that. But we also wanted to get a second opinion and make sure that this was the right thing for them.
But they didn't like that.
They didn't like it. No. And so we did agree to get a port placed right away, because we had already been hearing about IV vitamin C and
it would be easier to do that.
Than just poking a 1-year-old every time. So we got the port place. We said, okay, thank you for the diagnosis, or what you've done so far. We're going to go home and get a second opinion. And from there, it was a stream of probably a dozen different doctors and nurses and social workers, all telling us not to do it. And
the CYS called the
CPS. Yeah. So
CPS is it
Child Protective Services?
Oh, I was thinking it's CYS. Why was I thinking CYS?
But so it was
Child and Youth Services. It's probably called different things.
The different states call it different things. Yeah, but no. So it was kind of weird how it worked out. So we did take him home, and we didn't know about the CPS call. But then, I think 2 days after that, we were sleeping in bed with him, and he woke up in the middle of the night with a crazy high fever. All of a sudden, he was puking all over the place, and we didn't know what was going on. And so it was like the hospital that we had just worked so hard to get out of. All of a sudden, it was 90 miles an hour back to the hospital. And it turned out that he had gotten a bloodstream staph infection
from the port
as a result of getting the port put in. And so at that point, we were just basically, for lack of a better term, trapped in the hospital.
Yeah, done.
And then because for those couple days, I'd been calling around all sorts of different, Mexican and German clinics and trying to figure out what we were going to do. But all those travel plans went out the window because now we got
the infection.
Now we got the infection.
Yeah. So then, there you are in the hospital. Okay, so they do the chemo.
So at that point we
shrink it.
At that point we considered to do a round of chemotherapy because it's like, okay, we do have to do something about this tumor.
It can choke off his spinal cord.
Yeah. So we went through a round of chemo, and that was tough. But you know, like I was starting to say last night, is we demanded a feeding tube right away. At least I think I mentioned this last night. But
yeah, you did.
You know, they wait for a lot of these kids to get super emaciated and, you know, just looking like a typical cancer patient, and then they'll put a feeding tube in and try to, you know, put the GMO crap into it.
Yeah, but because you wanted to put all the good nutrients in, put it in right away. That was smart.
Yeah. And so we demanded that, and that was actually, you know, weird enough. That was a fight in and of itself.
Of course.
just getting that feeding tube in because they didn't understand. But
you guys ended up bringing your juicers, your blenders. I mean, you
Yeah,
set up, right? You had all the nutrients. I mean, you know, you weren't the average family. They were probably laughing at you like, oh, look at these people, right? Meanwhile,
some of the nurses thought it was cool. They're like,
Okay.
"Oh, you're making your own feeds." That's what they, you know, because they call the stuff the feeds, and yeah, you can call it that. And, yeah, but it was quite the operation in there, and
Right.
yeah, water filter, and but
so at this point, you're doing a combination of, you know, standard care and natural care, which was really smart.
yeah, and then finally we cleared the infection, and the infection actually ended up coming back because they didn't realize it was living in the line. We got out of the hospital and then ended up going back to the hospital, and then he had to get the line taken because it wasn't a port he got put in. It was actually a Hickman line. We had tubes sticking out of his chest.
So it was in the line.
But then so we had to get the line taken out and get the port put in. But between those two occurrences, and we were actually on our way back to the hospital just for kind of a regular appointment type of deal. And my uncle calls me because he was kind of looking over the house, just helping out with everything. And he said, you know, I just got a knock on the door here from CPS, Child Protective Services. It sounds like somebody is not, you know, not agreeing with the way you're doing things, sort of thing. And so, of course, when we get to the hospital, and oh no, we didn't call, you know.
Wow.
But I don't know who else would have done it.
That makes me mad. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah,
and
so
for different reasons of, you know, our freedoms. You know, and you know, it's your child, but that's a whole nother show. I don't even want to go down that road right now.
Yeah, so it was quite interesting to say the least. You know, we get a childhood cancer diagnosis, but then we're also in a CPS office answering questions about, you know, were you molested as a child, and you know, how do you discipline your son? And it's like, my son's 1 year old. I've never needed to discipline him before, you know.
Jeez.
But. Yeah, but anyway, it's an unfortunate part of the story. But so at that point, it was like, well, you know, we did talk to the hospital, and it sounds like you guys are complying now. So as long as you keep complying, we won't have a problem. And you know, and then successive trips to the hospital and more appointments, it became very clear that we would need to keep doing the chemotherapy, or there'd be
because they initially just said one shot. Is that right? Or
well,
two?
They had said that the protocol would be 4 rounds of chemotherapy,
right.
And then you know I asked, well, what are you looking for in those 4 rounds, and they gave me a couple different metrics of reduction in tumor size and that sort of thing. And by that point, we were already, you know, going off to see a naturopathic oncologist on the side and getting IV vitamin C infusions, and then like we talked about, just shoving all these different supplements into his feeding tube. And so I said, I think I can get there in 2 rounds. You know, if we can hit these markers in 2 rounds.
You were smart. You asked, okay, what's the goal? Because if we can hit the goal sooner, can we know, stop the poison?
Yeah. And so, well, that'll never happen, but you know, okay, we'll give you it, because usually they don't do another scan until after 4 rounds. And I said, well, we'll give you a scan after 2 rounds. And of course, we blew those metrics out of the water. But
did they stop?
It was
no, they wanted to keep going.
No,
yeah.
well, we actually said this, and this. And it's, no, you didn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So then we got to 4 rounds, and we're like, okay, now we're done, right? And no, I don't know where you got 4 rounds. It's going to be 8, And so I don't know. The story kept on just getting crazier.
So I mean, what'd you do? I mean, did you have to comply to the 8?
No, that's when we moved.
That's when you bailed.
Yeah.
So you went to Utah, which you know, you're my neighbor technically.
Yeah.
And you ended up going to Utah, and little different pressure.
Yeah, and it's not like we just called them and said, "Would you let us not do chemotherapy?" or something like that.
But you realized you had to get out of there.
Yeah, and Utah is, you know, it's very natural health friendly, which you know, Washington State was too, but it's also a little higher on the personal liberty scale, I guess you could say, as far as the...
Absolutely. A little bit more freedom, I would say, here.
Yeah. And so, that was enough for us to say, let's give it a try. And like I said, it's not like Utah is some bastion of, parental rights where you can do anything. But
so you ended up here. And so different hospital, different philosophy. What happened?
We ended up, the team we landed on ended up, by the time, it was kind of just nice that we were starting over with this team. And, by that point, Ryder, the secondary tumors were pretty much gone. The metastasis was pretty much gone. The primary tumor was so substantially reduced at that point that they were okay with, what they called a wait and see approach, and which makes a lot of sense. They didn't necessarily. Yeah, they knew we were doing all the natural stuff, and maybe they put some credence into that. But really, more than anything, they were just willing to see Ryder as an individual, our son, and think maybe 4 rounds of chemo was enough for this kid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
That seems a more sensible approach to me.
Yeah.
So they did that. What happened?
Yeah, and he said if things start going the wrong way, we can turn on a dime, whatever, and just, so that sounded good to us.
It didn't. It started going the right way.
Yeah.
Without treatment, without chemo, it started going in a very positive direction.
Yeah,
rapidly.
It was kind of crazy. Like once we had the choice and they were actually willing to work with us, it actually was like a whole new oh crap, do we really want to stop?
Funny,
but we ended up stopping at that point, and things kept going in the right direction.
Yeah. So today, it's a size of a walnut, and it looks like it may just be scar tissue.
You could call it a residual mass at this point.
Yeah.
There's been, I don't know, on one scan over the course of a year, it ticked up just slightly, and of course that was pretty disheartening. But there's something called ganglioneuroma, which is kind of cells it's basically benign cells that aren't cancerous, but maybe just kind of smoldering in there, that sort of thing. But that being said, we doubled down on just everything we were doing holistically, and then on the next scan a few months later, it stopped in its tracks, and then this last scan we got, it actually looks like that mass has been there for a long time, and we would like it to go away. On this last scan, it actually looks like it is starting to break up a little bit, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. How many years later are we now? 5 or 6?
We're just about 5 years later. He was diagnosed in May, and it's
So and how long's it been since the last chemo? 4 years.
4+ years.
Yeah, 4+ years. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I asked you this question last night. Yeah. So what do they say? Here you stop the chemo, obviously, and their comment was,
it's just good luck, and
got lucky.
That sort of thing.
It's like, you got lucky, that's good.
Yeah. But I mean, this team is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm liking this team.
Yeah,
There's no bad things for this team.
Our primary oncologist at one point made the crack that these aren't vitamins we're giving these kids here, which he's actually acknowledging the toxicity of the treatment, and they're always trying to minimize it, which is that's the only person I've really ever oncologist that I've heard really actually acknowledge that. So it's
well, I mean,
cool.
you all, and we're going to share your website here, but you all have done a lot from a nutrition standpoint, from a detox standpoint, which is, where something you and I resonate here on, which is part of the success that you had, I mean, obviously. So tell them, you, from pain to purpose is my story. You have a great purpose now, helping families with these situations. And one of the things that you and Teddy were amazing at is, working through, I mean, how to get these healthy foods in a child, how to get these types of things in an infant. I mean, I'm saying, all the way through 5. I mean, that's a hard situation, but on your website, you have all these little tips and things that the only way you could learn is going through it, right? I have no idea how to get that in your child. You guys help these families.
Yeah, and there wasn't, there wasn't any, there was alternative or integrative cancer websites, obviously.
Yeah, but nothing with all the things, here's what to do, how to do it.
Yeah, and especially for kids, that sort of thing. So along the way, we started posting everything we were doing, originally just to Facebook for fundraising purposes, and to just show other families what we were doing, because we saw a lot of these families just up close and personal in the hospital that
Yeah, they needed
it was
guys.
it was the exact
You guys
opposite
are doers,
of a juicer.
man. Yeah, I mean, I want to know. Okay, give the website and share this, because how many other families are going through childhood cancers? They need this resource. Give the resource.
Yeah, so the website is thesternmethod.com. Our last name is Sternagel. That's a little hard to remember, so we shortened it up. It's the Stern Method.
Smart. Sternagel. That's a dyslexic. Who knows what I'm calling?
Fun fact, it was actually originally called My Kid Cures Cancer.
Uh-huh.
But that got politically unfeasible to be running around with cures cancer in your name. So
That stinks, though. But my kid. Well, okay. Your son cured cancer? No, his body cured cancer. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, obviously, this must have been. It must have decimated your finances. I mean, what does it do to a family?
Oh yeah, I mean, Teddy and I were just getting started, a young couple. Ryder was our first kid, that sort of thing. So we get asked this question a lot, or people assume, and they make comments about, you're so lucky that you were so well off to be able to afford all this, because they see us posting all the different energy medicine gadgets we're getting, and just hundreds of dollars worth of supplements, and like I said, the IV vitamin C in itself adds up pretty quick. But like I said, fundraising was a really, really big thing for us.
Do you talk about that on your website at all?
Yeah,
oh, good.
Yeah. And we have a course coming out in just a few months here. That's going to be take people through not only kind of how we think about supplementation and nutrition and detox and a lot of the stuff you think about when you think about cancer, but a lot of the mechanics of how we've made all this stuff work for us between because we'd raised tens of thousands of dollars to be able to afford all this stuff, and even just how do you fit all of this stuff into a day, like having a healing schedule more or less was really big for us, and it just started out with supplements. Some needed it because we were on like 50 different supplements at any one time, and some are with food, some are without food, some are right before bed, and
now navigating that, right? It's like, I mean, how are you working? I mean, this is a full-time job. I'm sure Teddy really raised up for most of it.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate in that I was an outside sales guy without an office to report to, so I was already working out of the house. But that being said, it was still I will never forget the first few months that Ryder was diagnosed, and I wasn't really selling anything, but the checks kept coming in, and I'll always be grateful to my old day job for that. I'll never forget that. But outside of that, at some point I had read that book, the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and it was kind of all about how to get out of your day job and only work 4 hours, and fast forward, the second part came true. I don't have the day job anymore, but now I work way more than 40 hours, but it's for a good cause, obviously. But one of the things in his book was outsourcing as much of your day job as you could using freelance services like Upwork.com and things like that. And I said, well, I could. We're raising money, fundraising. So what if I, found somebody to do all the parts of my day job that it didn't necessarily need to be me doing?
Yeah.
I outsourced a lot of the, data entry and proposal writing and stuff like that to a guy that still works for us in the Philippines, and that gave me more time to just be on PubMed doing research and implementing everything we were doing for Ryder. And
yeah, I mean, I've done shows on you, with you, I should say, interviews. How to make your home safe. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of that on your website too, which is really important because obviously this weekend we heard a lot about the causative factors of cancer. So many chemicals in the environment that we have no idea. Even in utero, as I pointed out in my story, my wife giving my kids the lead. So many other chemicals, and they all talked about you have to get upstream to cause the detox. All of it is critical.
Well, yeah, that's a really big component of what we've done for ourselves and what we try to get out there to the other people is you can throw all of these therapies at the problem as you want. But if you're still living in an environment that potentially had a big percentage causative factor in the first place, be it chemicals or mold or EMFs or most likely a soup of all of those things, then you're going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah, so you just said some. A lot of us focused on chemicals in our environment, moldy homes. There's a lot of environmental things that you have to consider. and really very, very important. And obviously you guys, you were doing a lot of the right things, but yet we live in today's day and age, and there's a lot of stress on the DNA.
Got to be taken up to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that being said, stress.
Your wife was going through a lot of stress.
Yeah, she had a when she was pregnant. Actually, she had a day job situation where it was one of those, trying to make things so miserable on her that she would quit, and they wouldn't have to pay the maternity leave. At least, that's the only explanation I can come up with for why they were treating her the way they were. But it got to her. It really got to her. I could see on her face when she came home every day, and we ended up pulling her out way earlier than we had planned on. But I still think about that to this day. That may have been the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. I don't know.
Yeah. When you look at physical, chemical, and emotional stressors, they come together, create a perfect storm, and it can trigger certain conditions. I mean, no doubt about it, in genes for that matter. I hate the cliche thing, but that you would say, okay, if there's one piece of advice you would, tell a parent that's going through this. But for this situation, I think it's worth saying that because I just put myself in this situation. I think, gosh, it's like, I can't even imagine. So what one piece of advice would you give them?
I'd say, as hard as it is to look at it like this, I still think it is the best way to look at it. It's really caused us to take 10 steps back, look at everything from the biggest picture possible, and basically just do our best to remove all badness, for lack of a better term, from our life, be it physical toxins, the home environment, or just the energy my wife and I are putting off and trying to, project the best energy we can onto him, or getting him outside and, just really living the best life possible. But, just trying to replace all of, any negative factor with something positive.
Yeah.
And that's,
well, you're helping people do that. I started this piece by saying 67% increase since the 1950s in childhood cancers. By the way, most experts, if not all experts, feel that it is environmentally induced, meaning that that's the biggest component of this increase that we're seeing. Why else is it happening? Physical, chemical, emotional stress. And the chemicals, we've done many shows on that we're exposed to today. Hidden things, flame retardants. I mean, I can go down the list of things. And if it doesn't show up as a child, it may show up later. Autism right now is sailing. 1 in 2 kids predicted by 2032, if the statistics say the same. It looks like it is. But this is where we are right now as a nation.
Yeah, and that's a good point you made about maybe something's not showing up right now, but it might later. Right. I think a lot of we have a lot of families following us that are just inspired, that aren't going through cancer, but are inspired to live healthier lives for their families. Right. And I for the folks that don't really subscribe to that and just kind of look at us like, well, that's unfortunate for you that you have to be so paranoid about this stuff. But our kid's healthy, and we don't need to. But it's like even if they never come down with childhood cancer or something like that, with adult cancer rates being pretty much 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 these days, you want your kid getting diagnosed with cancer when he's 40?
But it's even beyond that. Look, my kids are here at this particular seminar, and I had a conversation with all the youngsters, right? And they're like, look, our whole generation, everybody's sick. All of their friends are sick. They're already developing degenerative conditions. They're on meds. They're doing things just to focus. Like I said, how many are taking Adderall? It's a sick generation, right? I probably know that more than you because my kids are there. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And they're telling me what's going on. It's scary. When your kids' age get to there, I don't know what we're going to see. We're going to see an explosion of autoimmune cancer and other, terrible, basically degenerative conditions.
Yeah, no, I starting to get invited to birthday parties and stuff like that now, and just seeing seeing what all the kids are eating, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, and it's beyond that. It's the food, it's the chemicals, it's the stress of life, it's the EMFs. We've done shows and all these things. Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you. I appreciate you coming on sharing. Share the show because this is important.
Hey, we should mention the event you're going to be on, that we're putting on.
Put it up.
It's called the Anti-Cancer Revolution, and it's an online conference or summit, if you want to call it that, with 40 plus speakers. You're on it, Dr. Pompa. All talking about. I'm kind of informally referring to it as the truth about cancer meets what you might hear at a integrative physicians conference, naturopathic oncologist conference.
We'll give you a link for that so you can share it and be a part of that as well.
Yeah.
Need to hear the information. Yeah, thanks for doing that. All right.
Yeah.
See you on the next one. Remember, fix the cell, get well.
Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. This episode was brought to you by CytoDetox. Please check it out at buycytonow.com. We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We truly appreciate your support. You can always find us at cellularhealing.tv, and please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, and sharing the show with anyone you think may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.